السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأزواجه وذرياته وأصحابه ومن والاه. ثم أما بعد، أسعد الله أوقاتكم ونور قلوبكم بمعاني الإيمان والإسلام والإحسان، وتقبل منا ومنكم صيامنا وقيامنا وركوعنا وسجودنا في هذا الشهر المبارك، هذا الشهر الكريم، شهر الرحمة وشهر المغفرة وشهر العتق من النار. جعلنا الله سبحانه وتعالى من عتقاء هذا الشهر الكريم، إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. So alhamdulillah, we are very much fastly approaching the last third of Ramadan, a very Mubarak time. It is said that the Prophet ﷺ, when he entered into the last third of Ramadan, that he would dedicate himself wholly to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and of the recitation of the Quran, and have a renewed vigor in the approach to this beautiful month that ends only 10 days later. So we're looking at the 19th juz of the Quran, the 19th juz. So we have this juz and the one after, and then we will enter into the last 10 of Ramadan bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And 19th juz encompasses Surah Al-Furqan with Surah Al-Shu'ara and some of Surah An-Naml. Surah An-Naml. And we're going to look at Surah An-Naml, in English, the ant, and we'll see why it was called that in a minute. And in the surah we see at the beginning verses, we see a small recounting of Musa alayhi salam and the signs that he was given. So he was given two major signs personally, which were the casting of a staff into a serpent and his hand turning bright white after he puts it inside his garment and brings it out again. These two signs were shown personally to Pharaoh, which he rejected in turn, and also Tis'a ayat, the other 9 signs that were brought to the people of Pharaoh, Fir'aun, from the blood and the beetles and the frogs and so forth that are mentioned in other surahs that are only mentioned here, that they're 9. But we're going to look at specifically the verses that recount the story of Sayyidina Sulaiman, who was the son of Dawood alayhi salam, and the queen of Sheba, otherwise known as Bilqis, and in Arabic Saba. So Saba is Sheba, which is the Qarya or the town in Yemen. And that begins with verse 15. عن قوله تعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد آتينا داود وسليمان علما وقال الحمد لله الذي فضلنا على كثير من عباده المؤمنين وورث سليمان داود وقال يا أيها الناس علمنا منطق الطير وأوتينا من كل شيء إن هذا لهو الفضل المبين. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا. We have given knowledge to Dawood and Sulaiman. وَقَالَا, يعني they both said, الحمد لله الذي فضلنا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preferred us or given us much over other, على كثير من عباده المؤمنين, over other believers from amongst his servants. And Sayyidina Sulaiman, the ilm that he was given, the knowledge that he was given was quite unique. Sulaiman also was unique in that he was a prophet and he was also a king, prophet king. And he was given the knowledge of hearing the voices of birds and the voices of animals. And it was put at his disposal, taskhir al-jinn. He was also able to command the jinn at will to do things for the kingdom and to do things for him. And he had an army also, a large army that was at his disposal. So these facets are important, and we know that in previous shara'a, previous prophets, our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a prophet servant. Sayyidina Sulaiman also was a prophet servant, but he also was a king at the same time. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وورث سليمان داود وقال ورث سليمان داود. So Sulaiman inherited from Dawood. Here it means inherited an-nubuwah. Sayyidina Dawood had other sons, had other children, but Sulaiman is the one that inherited nubuwah. We know that here this ta'bir, this way of saying it, that prophethood is not something that is as a birthright, right? It's not inherited from one prophet to the next, though many of the prophets were sons and grandsons of other prophets, like Sayyidina Yusuf that we mentioned in a previous session, Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim. Yusuf, the son of Yaqub, who is the son of Ishaq, who is the son of Ibrahim, alayhi salam. So the nubuwah is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designating it. Wallahu ya'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalata. Wallahu ya'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalata. Allah knows where He's going to put the risala. But it seems that the sunnah, or the way for many of the prophets of Bani Israel, in that they came from that lineage, originally from Ibrahim, like the patriarch of all of them, alayhi salam, and then descended down from Ibrahim alayhi salam all the way to the other prophets, and including Sulaiman, obviously, and Dawood, and Yusuf, and Yaqub, and Ishaq. وقال يا أيها الناس علمنا منطق الطير. So here he says to the people, علمنا, we were taught, منطق الطير, that we knew منطق الطير, أي فهمنا, we understood the منطق of the طير, the way that the birds communicate with one another, and so they were able to communicate with Sulaiman alayhi salam. The haqiqah of that, did they, هل Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أنطقهم, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the ability to speak, and so that Sulaiman could hear them? Or did He give merely Sulaiman alayhi salam the ability to hear them, and that birds indeed have a way of communicating, or other animals? The verses don't say one way or the other, Wallahu a'lam. Many of the ulama thought that animals have a type of soul, not a human type of soul, but a soul nonetheless, that if it were able to express itself, then human beings would be able to understand what it's saying. And in fact, even during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, animals spoke to him as well. So one thing we should point out, that Imam al-Bayhaqi and others point out, that there's not a miracle that was given to any of the prophets mentioned in the Quran or outside of the Quran, except also the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had a share in that. So yes, the ant and the hudhud spoke to Sulaiman alayhi salam, but also the camel spoke to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And even something that other prophets didn't have, inanimate things like the tree stump, the palm tree stump that the Prophet ﷺ used as a mimbar, also spoke. And in fact, the Sahaba heard it scream when they had fashioned a new mimbar for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and then the Prophet was going to leave the palm tree stump. And so the Prophet ﷺ actually consoled it, putting his blessed hand on the palm tree stump, and it was consoled. And they actually built around it or on top of it. So to our knowledge, that tree stump is still there in al-Madinah al-Munawwara, fi al-Rawda al-Sharifa, but everything was built around it. Wallahu a'lam. وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and we have been given from everything. Obviously not everything that literally means everything. This they say عموم معناه الخصوص. But when you say someone has everything, they mean everything that maybe one can possibly imagine that he would be in need of. So everything was musakhar for him. Everything was put at his disposal. This army of jinn, army of human beings, animals, so forth. إن هذا لهو الفضل المبين. Certainly this is a great favor that has been bestowed, a very clear and great favor bestowed upon Sulaiman alayhi salam. وحشر سليمان جنوده من الجن والإنس والطير فهم يوزعون حتى إذا أتوا على وادي النمل قالت نملة أيا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون فتبسم ضاحكا من قولها وقال رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأدخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. So Sulaiman alayhi salam had this army of men and jinn. وحشر سليمان جنوده من الجن والإنس. حشر, yeah, they came together. والطير, and the birds. فهم يوزعون. يعني يوزعون means that they were plentiful or enough, or that they were spread out over a great area. حتى إذا أتوا على وادي النمل, until they came to the area, the valley of the ants, or where ants were living. قالت نملة. A naml, an ant said, and they said this was the queen ant that spoke, and that the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam heard the queen ant from 3 miles away, from underneath the ground, and that was the gift that he was given, the mu'jiz he was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قالت نملة يا أيها النمل, speaking to the rest of the naml, the rest of the ants, ادخلوا مساكنكم, enter into your homes, لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده. So they said Sulaiman's army alayhi salam had cavalry, and it had infantry and a great number, and they would have trampled upon the houses or on ants if they remained on the surface of the ground. وهم لا يشعرون, right? وهم لا يشعرون, and they were not aware because they don't see you. And so it's not mentioned here explicitly in the Quran, but some of the Mufassirun said that Sulaiman alayhi salam instructed the army, consisting of the infantry and the cavalry, to wait a little bit so that the ants can go back in their homes and they would not be destroyed by the army marching through. فتبسم ضاحكا من قولها. فتبسم ضاحكا. So Sulaiman alayhi salam smiled. ضاحكا. Here, ضاحكا doesn't mean out loud laugh, but yani a smile where the teeth are shown, much in the way that the Prophet ﷺ would smile. He would smile to the degree that his molars, then people could see them, but not like what's called a qahqaha, which is to laugh out loud. That would be considered, in a boisterous way. It's unbecoming of prophethood. فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِقًا مِنْ قَوْلِهَا. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled min qawliha, تعجب, amazing that the ant was able to speak, and he hears the ant, and he's able to instruct the army. So صَرَّ بِذَلِكَ, he was happy to be able to be put in that position. And it's interesting that when we talk about the natural environment and the earth and the animals that inhabit it, every single one of them has a right to live as much as anyone else. And to even take the life of something like an ant unnecessarily would be contravening the Sharia, our Sharia, the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So every life is precious, and every life has a right to be there, not looking at the magnitude of what we think to be the importance of that life, but rather because every life is important, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for it to be there. So there's a divine choice behind it. That's what makes it important. فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِقًا مِنْ قَوْلِهَا, from what she said, وَقَالَ رَبِّ أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتِكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me the wherewithal, the strength, and أَشْكُرْ نِعْمَتِكَ, that I can be grateful and show proper gratitude for this blessing, التي أنعمت علي, that you have blessed me with, وعلى والدي, and you have also blessed my parents as well, وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه, and that I do good deeds that will be pleasing to you, وادخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين, and let me enter to be amongst your righteous servants by your mercy. ثم يقول الله تعالى وتفقد الطير فقال ما لي لا أرى الهدهد أم كان من الغائبين لأعذبنه عذابا شديدا ولأذبحنه أو ليأتيني بسلطان مبين فمكث غير بعيد فقال أحطت بما لم تحط به وجئتك من سبأ بنبأ يقين. وتفقد الطير. So تفقد الشيء means to look for something is missing. And some of the other tafsir, they mentioned that Sulaiman alayhi salam was dependent upon the hudhud, and hudhud is like a pecker, like a woodpecker, a naqr. If you ever seen a hudhud, what's called a hoopoe in English, it uses its beak to tap on the ground. So it said that it used its beak to tap on the ground to indicate where water would be, and then Sulaiman alayhi salam would instruct the jinn to bring the water forth, so for his wudu, for his ablution. فَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرِ, he didn't find him when he was supposed to find him. فقال ما لي لا أرى الهدهد. How come I don't see the hudhud? What happened? أم كان من الغائبين? Or why is he absent? What's the reason for his absence? لأعذبنه عذابا شديدا. I will punish him a very bad punishment. Oh, I will slaughter him. أو ليأتيني بسلطان مبين. Or he will come to me بسلطان مبين يعني حجة مبينة. He better have a very good reason why he was not around when I needed him. فمكث غير بعيد. So فمكث غير بعيد يعني this could go back to Sulaiman or it could be the hudhud himself. So he stayed a little bit or a short lapse and then he came, or a short lapse and then the bird came, the hudhud came back. فقال, now this is the hudhud speaking, أحطت بما لم تحط به. I have found something or I've learned something that you don't know. وجئتك من سبأ بنبأ يقين. And I have come from Saba, from Sheba, بنبأ يقين. يعني I have come with you some very clear, certain news about Saba, about Sheba. So it's not mentioned here specifically, but Sulaiman alayhi salam, and he forgave the hudhud and said, okay, what do you have? What did you find? So the next verse, إني وجدت امرأة تملكهم وأوتيت من كل شيء ولها عرش عظيم وجدتها وقومها يسجدون للشمس من دون الله وزين لهم الشيطان أعمالهم فصدهم عن السبيل فهم لا يهتدون ألا يسجدوا لله الذي يخرج الخبأ في السماوات والأرض ويعلم ما يخفون وما يعلنون الله لا إله إلا هو رب العرش العظيم. He said, إني وجدت امرأة, I found a woman, تملكهم. She is the king or the queen over them. وأوتيت من كل شيء. And she has been given everything. Similar to what Sulaiman said about himself. وأوتينا من كل شيء. Also عموم بعد خصوص, or عموم بمعنى الخصوص. يعني she has a very strong kingdom and has many resources. ولها عرش عظيم. And she has a great throne. So the chair that she sits on, it's a great throne. And it said it was very elaborate and amazing. وجدتها وقومها. I found her and her people. يسجدون للشمس. They prostrate before the sun. So this is not a prostration of tahiyyah. It's understood to be a prostration of ibadah, of worship. So they're worshipping the sun. من دون الله. من دون الله, other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وزين لهم الشيطان أعمالهم. And the shaitan has adorned or embellished or made their actions look good before them. فصدهم عن السبيل. فصدهم عن السبيل. So he has prevented them or stopped them from the sabil. Which sabil? The sabil of Allah, the sabil al-haq, the sabil al-hidayah, the sabil, the way of guidance. فهم لا يهتدون. So they're not guided. And see also, yani in this hudhud, this little bird, we learn a lesson about how even we look at people who we deem to be misguided. He said, وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. Shaitan, and he led them astray. Shaitan is the one who made this particular path of worshipping the sun or something else in addition to it as the right way to go. فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. So they don't see the haqq, they don't see what the real is, what the haqq, what is the truth. So here it appears that they had no contact with any prophets or anything like that before that. يعني ما بدلوا وغيروا. بدلوا غير means that they inherited something that was true and then they changed it within their generation. That doesn't seem to be the case. And there was no one speaking to them prior to da'wah. So al-hudhud nasaba هذا الشر إلى الشيطان. So he attributed the evil that he saw, which is worshipping something other than Allah, that the shaitan, Satan, is the one who led them astray. And then he says, أَلَّا يَشْرُوا لِلَّهِ الَّذِي يُخْرِجُ الْخَبَأَ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This can be min qawlillah. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying this, or it could be actually the hudhud also. That why would they not prostrate, or why they should be, in other words, prostrating before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِي يُخْرِجُ الْخَبَأَ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So Al-khaba here means al-shay' al-khafi, something that is subtle. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ability to bring something small and subtle out of the samawati and the ard. So it's an indication, even though the sun is so big, and people think that the sun, maybe it has some power over things, but shams taghib, the sun goes away. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who can manifest the large things like the sun, and even the small subtle things that no one can see, that we're not aware of, like particles of dust. فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. That is the one who's more worthy of worship than something that comes and goes. وَيَعْلَمُ مَا يُخْفُونَ وَمَا يُعْلِنُونَ. And He is aware of what they keep secret and what they pronounce. And the sun doesn't have that ability. Allahu la ilaha illahu Rabbul Arsh al-Azim. Right? Allahu la illahu. Allah, there is none but He. Rabbul Arsh al-Azim. He is the Lord of the great throne. Even though it was said about Bilqis, the queen of Sheba, وَلَهَا عَرْشٌ عَظِيمٌ. وَلَهَا عَرْشٌ عَظِيمٌ. And she has a great throne. But that's not the real throne. The real throne is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. Allahu la illahu Rabbul Arsh al-Azim, the Lord of that great throne. ثم يقول الله تعالى قال سننظر أصدقت أم كنت من الكاذبين اذهب بكتابي هذا فألقه إليهم ثم تول عنهم فانظر ماذا يرجعون. So Sulaiman now speaks to the hudhud. He said, اذهب بكتابي هذا, take this letter that I have written, فألقيه إليهم, take it to them and give it to them, ثم تول عنهم, then leave, فانظر ماذا يرجعون, then see what their next step is. ماذا يرجعون, يرجعون بماذا, what will they do next? قالت يا أيها الملأ إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم إنه من سليمان وإنه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. So, as is often happens in the Quranic stories, there are some inferences we have to make based upon, if we were trying to piece together the story, that have to have happened. So the next verse that comes after اذهب بكتابي هذا, Sulaiman says to the hudhud, take my letter and bring it to Bilqis, the queen of Sheba. And then she says, قالت أيها الملأ. So her mala, or her advisors, her council, her entourage, the people in her court, her ministers, يا أيها الملأ إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم. I have received a noble letter. So what happened in the interim? The hudhud took the letter, he brought it to Bilqis, he gave it to her, he flew away, or he's watching what they're doing. And then she reads it, and then she says this to her people. So those steps are in there and has to be inferred. So that would be al-mafhum. We have al-mantuq. Al-mantuq is what the actual words say. Then al-mafhum, which is what could be understood. That has to be true in order for this to be contiguous, obviously. قالت يا أيها الملأ إني ألقي إلي كتاب كريم. I have received this noble letter. إنه من سليمان. It's from Sulaiman. وإنه, and it is بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. This is the only verse in the whole Quran that has بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم as a verse, not at the beginning of the surah. And then we have obviously the khilaf بين العلماء, the difference between the scholars of whether بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم is actually an ayah from Surah Al-Fatiha. Is it the actual first ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the Shafi'iyah? Or is it something just to be recited at the beginning of Surah Al-Fatiha? And Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen is the first ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, which is Madhab al-Malikiyah. Wallahu a'lam. But there's no dispute about this, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that is from the Quran, and it happens in Surah An-Naml, ayah number 30. إنه من Sulaiman, it's from Sulaiman, وإنه, and it is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Again, what does that mean? And it is Bismillah ar-Rahman, yani, is the letter itself encompass the meanings of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? That could be a meaning. Or is it the preamble, or is it the first line written in it? Is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? Also could be true. Or both those things could be true. Or there could be a third aspect that's about it. Whatever the case may be, this letter signified the meaning, or at least the written word of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And to our knowledge, Sulaiman and the Queen of Sheba maybe they didn't speak Arabic. So it was in whatever language they're communicating in, that it was Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And then she gives the madmoon. Well, what was actually in the letter? أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ وَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ. أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ وَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ, which sounds like a summary. أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ, do not try to, here, الْأَعْلَاء or تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ, do not try to, literally means be higher than us. But I think what's meant here, according to the Mufassirin, أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ, يعني do not try to be arrogant with us. Right? Try to think about what we're inviting you to, which is the message of the da'wah, the message of the deen, to worship Allah and not to worship the sun. And usually what prevents people from accepting something new, but nevertheless is the haqq, is pride. This is what prevented Satan from prostrating before Adam alayhi salam, and what prevented Quraysh from accepting the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They knew him to be as-sadiq al-amin. They knew him to be the one who is truthful, the one who is trustworthy, the one that they would leave their valuables with even when they started opposing him. But then what prevented them? Their pride. They said, how can we take as our leader, as our prophet, Yatim Bani Hashim, the orphan of Bani Hashim? So their pride blinded them that even though he was an orphan from Bani Hashim, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was also Sayyidul Khalq, and he is Nabi al-Rahmah wa Nabi al-Ummah. But they didn't see that part. He's instructing her, أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ وَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ. Then that would give the meaning of, and then come to us as Muslims. The other meaning that some of the Mufassirin says, come to us Muslimin, يعني mustaslimin, يعني give up your position of authority and power and come to us under our position of authority and power. I think the first meaning is closer to the ruh, the spirit of what we see here in these verses. أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ وَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ, and come to us as Muslims. We're inviting you to Islam. Then the next verse, قالت يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون قالوا نحن أولو قوة وأولو بأس شديد والأمر إليك فانظري ماذا تأمرين قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة وكذلك يفعلون وإني مرسلة إليهم بهدية فناظرة بما يرجع المرسلون. So, the next verse, she sought counsel from her mala. يا أيها الملأ أفتوني, give me your opinions, give me your counsel. في أمري, and what I should do here. ما كنت قاطعة أمرا, I will not take a decisive stand about what to do. حتى تشهدون, till you bring to me, bear witness to what you want me to do or what you think we should do. What did they say back to her? قالوا نحن أولو قوة وأولو بأس شديد. يعني we're a very strong kingdom and we have a strong army. أولي بأس شديد. We can counter whatever he has. والأمر إليك, and the matter is with you. فانظري ماذا تأمرين. So tell us what you'd like to do. قالت, she said, إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها. When kings enter into a town that's not theirs, أفسدوها, they corrupt it or they destroy it. وجعلوا عزة أهلها أذلة, and they make the most elite and dignified of the group أذلة, right? They debase them, they humiliate them. So they humiliate the kings and princes and sultans of whatever town that they're coming in, and they make them in a humiliated state. وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ, and she says وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ, they would do the same. So even though she made that statement, and it's as if it's a qaida, muttarida, which means it's actually quite true most of the time, when kings without deen or without anything, a colonizing, corrupting power comes into a place and wants to take it over, what do? They humiliate people. We've seen that 1,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago, and we see it today. Colonizing powers go in and they humiliate everybody because they have no regard whatsoever for the people who actually live there. But despite this, she said, وَإِنِّي مُرْسِلَةٌ إِلَيْهِمْ بِهَدِيَّةٍ. However, I will send to them a gift. فَنَاظِرَةٌ بِمَا يَرْجِعُ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. So she wanted to have a little bit of a peace offering. What was this gift? They said it was some huge, perhaps monetary amount, or something that was quite valuable. It's not mentioned here specifically. فَنَاظِرَةٌ بِمَا يَرْجِعُ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. Then we'll see what our messengers say about how Sulaiman took this gift or accepted it. ثم قوله تعالى فلما جاء سليمان قال أتمدونني بمال فما آتاني الله خير مما آتاكم بل أنتم بهديتكم تفرحون ارجع إليهم فلنأتينهم بجنود لا قبل لهم بها ولنخرجنهم منها أذلة وهم صاغرون. So Sulaiman receives the letter. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ سُلَيْمَانَ قَالَ أَتَمُدُّونَنِي بِمَالٍ. So he responds back, you will send to me or try to extend my kingdom with money. فَمَا آتَانِي اللَّهُ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا أَتَاكُمْ. I am not in need. What I have with me is more than what you have and better than what you have. So I am not in need of this. مِمَّا أَتَاكُمْ بَلْ أَنْتُمْ بِهَدِيَّتِكُمْ تَفْرَحُونَ. Rather, I give it back to you because you'll be more happy with your gift, your monetary gift, than I will be, because I am not in need of it. إِرْجَعْ إِلَيْهِمْ. Right? So he's instructing his messenger. Here, not the hudhud anymore, likely a person. إِرْجَعْ إِلَيْهِمْ فَلَنَأْتِيَنَّهُمْ بِجُنُودٍ لَا قِبَلَ لَهُمْ بِهَا. We can bring them an army they have never seen before. وَلَنُخْرِجَنَّهُمْ مِنْهَا أَذِلَّةً. And we can take them out from there and from their army, أَذِلَّةً, humiliated, وَهُمْ صَاغِرُونَ, in a state of humiliation. But then Sulaiman alayhi salam says, قال يا أيها الملأ أيكم يأتيني بعرشها قبل أن يأتوني مسلمين قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيك به قبل أن تقوم من مقامك وإني عليه لقوي أمين قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك فلما رآه مستقرا عنده قال هذا من فضل ربي ليبلوني أأشكر أم أكفر ومن شكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن ربي غني كريم. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, he says, قال يا أيها الملأ. His mala is also his councils, his advisors. أيكم يأتيني بعرشها. Which one of you will bring me her throne here, where he is, في الشام, north of Yemen, قبل أن يأتوني مسلمين, before they come to me as Muslims, or before they come to me in a state of surrender, according to the other opinion. قال عفريت من الجن. So a ifrit, a demon from amongst the jinn, and this, the ifrit is a special type of jinn that has, power to bring something in an instant, is what he offered here. أنا آتيك به, I will bring it to you. قبل أن تقوم من مقامك, before you can even get up, it will be here. وإني عليه لقوي أمين. And I am capable of this. I am qawi, I am strong, and I am amin, and I am trustworthy. Right? We've seen these attributes before. When tasks need to be done, look for al-qawi al-amin. When the daughter of Shu'aib, Madian, said to her father about Sayyidina Musa, رَبِّ اسْتَأْجِرْهُ إِنَّ خَيْرَ مَنْ اسْتَأْجَرْتَ الْقَوِيُّ الْأَمِينُ. You should hire him because the best person to hire to do any task is al-qawi, the one who is competent, and al-amin, the one who is trustworthy. Those are the two main attributes you look for. So he said, إِنِّي قَوِيٌّ لَقَوِيٌّ عَلَيْهِ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ. But then someone else said something else. قَالَ الَّذِي عِنْدَهُ عِلْمٌ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. He said the one that he has knowledge of the book, يعني the Torah in this case. علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به, I can bring it to you قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك, which literally means I can bring it to you before the blink of an eye. So even faster than the Ifrit, even faster than the demon from amongst the jinn. And it said, we don't know the identity of this one who offered this up. Some of here the tafsir says his name was Asif, and he was from the righteous of Bani Israel, and he knew Ismullah al-A'zam, he knew the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And other riwayah says he was Sayyidina al-Khidr, So Al-Khidr, who was with Musa alayhi salam, or maybe it was Jibreel, but the closer opinion is that he was this man from Bani Israel. Wallahu a'lam. So he says, أنا أتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك, before you blink your eye. فلما رآه مستقرا عنده, so when he actually saw it in front of him, قال هذا من فضل ربي, this is from the bounty of my Lord. ليبلوني أأشكر أم أكفر, this is a tribulation from Allah. أشكر, will I be grateful? أم أكفر, or will I deny the blessing? Because sometimes when people get beautiful blessings, the egoistic tendency tends to push you to attribute it to yourself. Like Qarun, who was also from Bani Israel, he attributed everything himself. إنما أوتيت علم عندي. I was given this because of my knowledge, my understanding. He said, لا, this is من فضل ربي. هذا من فضل ربي. It's from the great bounty of Allah. ومن شكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه. And whoever is grateful has truly been grateful, but the benefit comes back to the person who is being grateful. In other words, Allah is not in need of our gratitude. It is not decreased by it nor increased by it when we do it, or decreased by it when we don't do it. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ رَبِّي غَنِيٌّ كَرِيمٌ. And also the one who denies it, فَإِنَّ رَبِّي غَنِيٌّ كَرِيمٌ. My Lord is not in need of anyone, and He still remains the most generous. قال نكروا لها عرشها ننظر أتهتدي أم تكون من الذين لا يهتدون فلما جاءت قيل هكذا عرشك قالت كأنه هو وأوتينا العلم من قبلها وكنا مسلمين وصدها ما كانت تعبد من دون الله إنها كانت من قوم كافرين. So the arsh is there, and it's in the court of Sulaiman alayhi salam. But then he says to them, to his people, قالوا نكروا لها عرشها. نكروا لها عرشها. Conceal the arsh. Make it unknown to her. Like she can see part of it, but she cannot certainly identify it as her own. Why? لننظر أو ننظر, we'll see أتهتدي أم تكون من الذين لا يهتدون. Will she be able to recognize it even after we conceal it a little bit and know that it's hers? Or will she not? To see that someone from has knowledge of the book was able to bring it here in an instant. Because she had already left and her arsh was still there, her throne was still there. So she left Yemen and she's on her way north all the way to Sulaiman alayhi salam, and assuming that her throne is still there. فلما جاءت قيل أهكذا عرشك. So when she came, he says to her, is this as if this is your throne? Is this the one? Or is it like this? أهكذا. Is it something like this? قالت كأنه هو. She said, it's like it is. وأوتينا العلم من قبلها وكنا مسلمين. Right? And Sulaiman says that we were given this knowledge, and when she saw the arsh and then realized it was hers, آمنت بالله. So here's another part of the story that's not there. Then she accepted Islam. وآمنت بالله. Because there's no way that arsh could have gotten there in any other way. وكنا مسلمين. And we were Muslims. وصدها ما كانت تعبد من دون الله. What had stopped her before, that which she worshipped without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إنها كانت من قوم كافرين. She was amongst people who were disbelievers generation after generation, but she accepted Islam. And then Sulaiman says to her, قيل لها ادخلي الصرح فلما رأته حسبته لجة وكشفت عن ساقيها قال إنه صرح ممرد من قوارير قالت ربي إني ظلمت نفسي وأسلمت مع سليمان لله رب العالمين. So then Sulaiman instructs her, ادخلي الصرح. Enter into the sarh, which is kind of the court area or the courtyard or the palace. And it said that the palace of Sulaiman was constructed in such a way that the whole flooring was glass, very clear glass, a glass that we can't even imagine today, built by the jinn. And underneath of which was flowing water that even had fish and other aquatic animals underneath, such as that if you're walking on the glass, you think you're walking on the water. So when he says to her, قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الصَّرْحَ, enter into the palace, فَلَمَّا رَأَتْهُ حَسِبَتْهُ لُجَّةً. Right? She thought it was an ocean. وَكَشَفَتْ عَنْ سَاقِيهَا. right? And then she lifted her garment up so that she wouldn't get wet from the bottom. And then her calves were exposed. قال إنه صرح ممرد من قوارير. Then he said, no, this is not an actual ocean. This is a صرح ممرد من قوارير. This is actually glass, and that has been extended all over from built of glass. قالت ربي إني ظلمت نفسي. Right, then she said, I have wronged myself. She remember that each prophet comes with something that is miraculous, that is pertinent to their particular time. So in their particular time, buildings of this sort and of this magnitude and so forth was something that people excelled in. And if you think about Sheba was known to be a city of exquisite architecture. But Sulaiman alayhi salam had something way beyond that, anything that she could imagine. So when she saw this and the ingenuity of this thing that was built, قالت ربي إني ظلمت نفسي. Right, I have wronged myself. وأسلمت مع سليمان. And I have become Muslim with Sulaiman. لله رب العالمين. For Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And it said that Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam, then the Queen of Sheba didn't have a husband. He married her and that she became his wife. And that she went back to Sheba and her people practiced Islam, and that Sulaiman would come every once in a while, maybe once a month or something like that. And that's how that part of Yemen or Sheba then entered into Islam way before the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, at least in that particular time. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.